Everything is fine today. That is our illusion. Voltaire. All of our lives we've been fed the lie that somehow we are better than everybody else. We believe this so much that we feel it's morally acceptable to stick our noses in everybody's business. We have 777 military bases all over the world. Our currency is the world's reserve currency. We control most of the international organizations like the UN, IMF, and World Bank. We control the world shipping lanes. Our media is the most popular and sought-after propaganda in the world. Our corporations harvest the resources that our empire provides. This has led to the feeling that the American way of life is not negotiable. We print debt and we consume. This way of life was only possible by the very real and hard sacrifices made by Americans long dead.
Now, we were interested in Y2K, and we were interested in the tech crash, because we could see the new rules coming in the financial sector. But if you talk to people on Wall Street, they'll tell you there's a financial panic roughly every 13, 14 years in the United States, a crash. Why? Because you get far enough away from the last crash, pretty soon you only have stockbrokers, which is a young person's game, who can't remember what that last crash looked like. And the further they get from that last crash, they start talking about new rules, new ways of doing things, new realities, which we typically discover after the crash involve lying, cheating, stealing. And you get a rule set reset. So we could see that with the tech crash. But that was only going to impact the financial sector. And again, it was regular. We were looking for something really unprecedented that would impact the political and security fields. I think we get it with 9/11. And I could draw a line I've been thinking about for 5 years. Lots of new rule sets since 9/11. I could still pick up a New York Times, a Wall Street Journal, a Washington Post, and in every single day find you a story about some amazing new rule set that redefines the nature of privacy, how we handle information, definitions of criminal behavior, definitions of un-American behavior, new definitions of war. How can I tell we're in a rule set reset? We can't even decide what to call the enemy or where we can try them.
You can ignore reality, but you cannot ignore the consequences of ignoring reality. Ayn Rand. America is still deep in denial, which is the first stage of the awakening. This denial will be wiped away when the dollar collapses. For now, the economy is still functioning, and food and fuel are still available. The lights turn on, and American Idol is still the center of attention. Americans still have the illusion of wealth and normalcy. They are still stuck in the false left-right paradigm and think that some other sock puppet will turn things around. When the dollar collapses, all American illusions will collapse with it. Deep denial will turn into deep anger. The violence I expect in all urban areas in the United States will make all other global riots pale in comparison.
There's a reason. There's a reason for this. There's a reason education sucks, and it's the same reason that it will never, ever, ever be fixed. It's never going to get any better. Don't look for it. Be happy with what you got. Because the owners of this country don't want that. I'm talking about the real owners now. The big, the wealthy, the real owners, the big wealthy business interests that control things and make all the important decisions. Forget the politicians. They're irrelevant. The politicians are put there to give you the idea that you have freedom of choice. You don't. You have no choice. You have owners. They own you. They own everything. They own all the important land. They own and control the corporations. They've long since bought and paid for the Senate, the Congress, the state houses, the city halls. They got the judges in their back pockets. And they own all the big all the big media companies, so they control just about all of the news and information you get to hear. They got you by the balls. They spend billions of dollars every year lobbying to get what they want. Well, we know what they want. They want more for themselves and less for everybody else. But I'll tell you what they don't want. They don't want a population of citizens capable of critical thinking. They don't want well-informed, well-educated people capable of critical thinking. They're not interested in that. That doesn't help them. That's against their interest. That's right. You know something? They don't want people who are smart enough to sit around the kitchen table and figure out how badly they're getting fucked by a system that threw them overboard 30 fucking years ago. They don't want that. You know what they want? They want obedient workers. Obedient workers. People who are just smart enough to run the machines and do the paperwork and just dumb enough to passively accept all these increasingly shittier jobs with the lower pay, the longer hours, the reduced benefits, the end of overtime, and the vanishing pension that disappears the minute you go to collect it. And now they're coming for your Social Security money. They want your fucking retirement money. They want it back. so they can give it to their criminal friends on Wall Street. And you know something? They'll get it. They'll get it all from you sooner or later because they own this fucking place. It's a big club, and you ain't in it. You and I are not in the big club.
I was having breakfast this morning. I thought, how hard would it be to find? Page 1, business section. Ongoing story. Database on U.S. visitors set for huge expansion. The creation of a virtual border. Price tag, they're guessing $15 billion over 10 years. Did we need this before 9/11? Apparently. But 9/11 crystallized the sense of a rule set gap. And so we have been filling rule set gaps with great abandon ever since. Patriot Act is a rule set reset. Preemption strategy is a serious rule set change. The biggest rule set we've created in national security since we invented the concept of mutual assured destruction and spent about a decade selling it to the Soviets.
By the way, speaking of American values, aren't we about due to start bombing some small country that only has a marginally effective air force? Seems to me like we're a couple of weeks overdue to drop high explosives on helpless civilians. People who have no argument with us whatsoever. I think we ought to be out there doing what we do best, gang, making big holes in other people's countries. I hate to be repetitious, but God, we are a warlike lot, you know? We can't stand not to be fucking with somebody. We couldn't wait for that Cold War to be over, could we? Just couldn't wait for that Cold War to be over so we could go and play with our toys in the sand. Go play with our toys in the sand. And when we're not invading some sovereign nation or setting it on fire from the air, which is more fun, then we're usually declaring war on something here at home. Did you ever notice that? We love to do that, don't we? We love to declare war on things here in America. Anything we don't like about ourselves, we have to declare war on it. Don't do anything about it, but we just declare war on it. We got a war. It's the only metaphor we have in our public discourse for solving a problem. It's called declaring a war. We got a war on poverty, the war on crime, war on litter, the war on cancer, the war on drugs. But you ever notice there's no war on homelessness, is there? Nah, no war on homelessness. You know why? There's no money in that problem. There's no money in that problem. Nobody stands. It's true. Nobody stands to get rich off of that problem. You could find a solution to homelessness where the corporate swine and the politicians could steal a couple of $1 million each. You'd see the streets of America begin to clear up pretty goddamn quick. I'll guarantee you that. I will guarantee you that.
You cannot solve a problem from the same consciousness that created it. You must learn to see the world anew. Albert Einstein. Think about all that is wrong with the world today. Massive debts, endless wars, encroaching government power, too big to fails, systemic unemployment, and a general sense of fear and depression. You cannot solve these problems with the same consciousness as the ones that created this mess. You cannot cure a debt problem with more debt, restructured debt, or bailouts. You cannot solve war with more war, cyber war, proxy wars, or covert wars. You cannot control the power of the government with new politicians, laws, or lobbying. You cannot solve unemployment with more funding for education, more regulations, or strikes. In order to solve these and all other problems that plague our society, you need to create another consciousness.
Don't let anybody make you think that God chose America as his divine messianic force to be a sort of policeman of the whole world. God has a way of standing before the nations with judgment, and it seems that I can hear God saying to America, "You are too arrogant. If you don't change your ways, I will rise up and break the backbone of your power, and I'll place it in the hands of a nation that doesn't even know my name. Be still and know that I'm God."
Don't believe them, don't fear them, don't ask anything of them. Alexander Solzhenitsyn. Think about what you are really upset about in the world today. It could be war, taxes, the government encroachment on our privacy, or whatever. You'll waste time hacking at the branches and not the root of the problem. What you really want is your freedom and independence and to be left alone. The fundamental reason why any formalized group effort like Occupy Wall Street or the Tea Party will fail is that it is a collective effort against a collective problem, one of the same consciousness. You cannot beg for power You need to be independent of power. Sending good people in to reform a state is like sending virgins in to reform a whorehouse. Anonymous. The game is rigged, and nothing will change with elections, protests, editorials, Occupy movements, or Tea Parties. They are important, but they will not change the system. The boomers tried to rebel in the 60s against all that was wrong in the world.
There's a time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart, that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all.
They lack the mature wisdom to guide them to the root of their problems and to become a real threat to those that seek to control them. If you want to become a real threat to the system, act independently of the system. This is essentially what a responsible citizen must do to a repressive government. Slamming your door at your parents' house is the same as a million-man march. You think it is a show of power, but those that are in charge think it's a cute but meaningless exertion of power and do not fear it in the least. Let them march all they want, so long as they pay their taxes. Alexander Haig. You must physically, financially, politically, intellectually, emotionally, and even spiritually remove yourself from their control. The most potent weapon of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. Stephen Biko.
Menarik seluruh rekening saya dan saya jadikan dinar dan dirham. Sekitar 20-25%. Maka nilai aset saya tetap bertahan, tapi nilai rupiahnya semakin tinggi. Jadi itulah saya bisa menyelamatkan aset-aset saya. Jadi saya bisa membeli bahan bangunan, pendidikan dan lain-lain dengan tanpa mengurangi nilai aset. Bagaimana kalau saya tetap disimpan uang di bank, maka saya akan kehilangan banyak.
Marah nggak Mas sama sistem bank-bank sekarang ini?
Saya tidak marah karena itu sudah terorganisasi dengan baik. Tapi kenapa kita serahkan kebebasan kita, pola hidup kita diatur oleh orang lain yang kita tidak inginkan. Jadi itulah makanya dinar dirham ini saya sebutkan sebagai suatu gerakan moral kebebasan individu yang mutlak.
It's hard to get an exact figure at the moment, but in the last 10 years, probably it's more than 50,000 coin has been distributed. There is an equality of exchange, equal to equal. In other words, it can only be met by exchanging commodity with commodity. So if you want to exchange a head of goat, then you need or you must get as an exchange other commodity that has a similar value, and that can be best served by gold or silver. Paper money doesn't serve that equality, because one party lose an asset, let's say a head of gold, and the other party just get a piece of paper which has no value. When we minted the dinar for the first time 9 years ago, it was only worth 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces. These 4 pieces, about 400,000 rupiah. Today, you need 15 pieces of this paper money, 1,500,000 rupiah to get 1 dinar. 1,500 years ago, 1 dinar equals to 2 head of gold. And today, if you go everywhere in the world, you can buy 2 heads of gold with 1 gold dinar, right? While a coin of dirham, the silver coin, you can have 1 head of chicken. Some people see it like a story of this king with no clothes, right? So when everybody see that the king was wearing very beautiful clothes, but in fact he wears no clothes, until a small boy said, look, the king has no clothes. It's the same thing with this paper money, that we are told that this is wealth which has a values on it, until someone says, look, this is just a piece of paper, no value on it. So, right, so if you cut like this, look, 100,000 and it's gone. Where's the 100,000? And magically, if you put a cello type on it, the 100,000 rupiah came back. Only by putting a cello type on it, people will accept it again. It's very magical. It's magic. This one is the real one. The current system is not only unsustainable, but it's collapsing. So we have to be prepared with other system which can be sustainable and more stable. The banking system is the crime, and the bankers are the criminal. The current system is taken for granted as the only system available. It is not only unsustainable, it is unjust, and it's collapsing. So we have to find the better alternative. We have it. In Islam, you have to prevent wealth to be circulated among the rich. And what is happening today is that the wealth, the real wealth, which is gold and silver, are only sitting amongst the wealth vault, while the people are getting the worthless paper money. Now what we are doing is reverse the process. We return the paper money to the banking system and take out the gold and circulate it to the hands of the people. Now the people will have the real wealth within their hands.
Dinar ini bukan sebuah revolusi, tapi ini kembali lagi ke fitrah manusia. Jadi manusia disuruh memilih, jadi tidak dipaksakan. Jadi dia memilih antara yang berlaku dengan yang tidak berlaku, antara yang stabil dengan yang tidak stabil, antara tetap dengan inflasi. Jadi mereka memiliki dua pilihan. Ini adalah untuk sebagai gerakan freedom and justice.